Our presentation will be on the application of the feminist and Marxist critical theories as lenses through which to discuss the transformative power of literature. But before we begin our analysis of the transformative power of literature, through the examples of The Age of Innocence and Legally Blonde, there are a few terms that we must go over.
Feminist critical theory is a theory used to critique literature and other media for its lack of gender equality through marginalization or unequal representation of women. The female experience is the rejection of the application of male standards to female personality and demands that women and men be judged independently. It asks whether aspects of feminine life are included in the work and whether it is a male or female narrative point of view. The male gaze is when a film or other visual arts performance is presented from a male heterosexual point of view. It explores the idea that men and women are complementary, but rejects the idea of feminine incompleteness. The male gaze is sometimes experienced involuntarily by the audience due to camera angles or perspectives. In terms of power dynamics, feminist critical theory determines whether a female character in a work of literature has power and what type it may be. It also notes the division of labor and economics between men and women in the work studied. Objectification is demeaning someone to the equivalent of a commodity. And finally, sexualization means to emphasize a physical or behavioral aspect of a person in a sexual way, regardless of whether or not it is wanted.
Moving on, Marxist critical theory explores the ways in which literature reflects materialism and class structures. It is a product of ideological and economic determinants specific to a particular era. The bourgeoisie is comprised of the capitalistic class who owns most of society's wealth and means of production. The status quo represents the existing state of affairs. Currency is something of value, such as money or status, that the bourgeoisie has that the proletariat desires. Ideologies are systems of belief that underlie our actions and material lives. Hegemony is leadership, power, or dominance, usually by one country or social group above others. It is made up of the system of interlocked institutions, practices, worldviews, expectations, hopes, and fears that makes the status quo seem natural and unchallengeable.
In regard to the intersection of Marxist and feminist theories, our analysis does not focus on Marxist feminist critical theory. Rather, we analyze Marxist and feminist theories separately, then briefly delve into how the two issues often coincide.
Now moving on to our first analysis, Edith Wharton's classic novel, The Age of Innocence. First, let's look at the novel through a feminist lens. In the novel, virginity and chastity are extremely important in New York's high society culture. Ellen Olenska is shunned because of her extramarital affair when she fled her abusive husband in Europe. This example shows the specific struggles and restrictions of women and how they are forced into male standards of society. Ironically, this specifically female experience is seen through the eyes of the male narrator, bringing us to our next topic of discussion. The audience views The Age of Innocence through the lens of a male character, Newland Archer, who, as the story progresses, becomes slightly more enlightened to the plight of the female characters on whom he passes judgment. Even though the novel is written by a woman, the audience is subjected to the perspectives of a man, which may not always be complete or accurate in their analysis of the female characters, demonstrating the male gaze. Lastly, throughout the novel, Wharton analyzes the everyday power struggles between men and women, specifically in the account of Ellen's former marriage. When Ellen marries her husband, her fortune is larger than his, but because of the conventional separation of economic powers between men and women, her husband controls the money, and she is left financially dependent upon him and later her family.
In keeping with the financial theme, let's move on to a Marxist approach to the novel. The story follows the bourgeoisie of New York City in the late 19th century.
The Archers, Wellens, and other central families in the novel are well established in New York City, and for the most part, they do not associate with individuals with less status. The status quo, or dominance of the New York City upper class, is preserved by a lack of communication between the sexes. Dialogue is vital to effect change, and without it, the old order will remain in place. Hence, the Wellens and Archers, particularly the males within the family, keep their status in the community since they never seek out communication with females and poorer people about the existing state of affairs. Currency in the Age of Innocence is stability, either in the form of a partner or finances. This is the primary reason, after all, why Newland marries May, even though he doesn't know her that well. Ultimately, though, Newland realizes that a rich and respectable wife is not all that he desires in life. A prominent ideology in the Age of Innocence is that women are lesser than men. A woman such as Ellen Olenska must either be the subject of her family or her husband. Even after divorce, she cannot have control over her own solvency and is forced to obey the wishes of her clan. In order to have any real social power in New York, one had to have been born into an old money family, which is a prime example of hegemony. Wharton herself actually had personal experience with this, as she was born into an established New York City family. In fact, it is said that the expression, keeping up with the Joneses, came from her family and their prominent fashionable status. Wharton incorporates these experiences into the novel through her characterization of the Archer family as one with social power primarily based on money.
In conclusion, The Age of Innocence demonstrates the intersection of feminist and Marxist critical theories because it provides insights on the relationships and attitudes between men and women in the 19th century and how class struggle and financial pressure affect those relationships.
New York society, a semi-autonomous entity that thrives on the oppression of its subjects and their willingness to conform, can only maintain order when the people lack straightforward communication. In The Age of Innocence, Wharton creates this lack of communication between Ellen and Archer in order to maintain this social order, especially for Archer, who was unwilling to let go of his conventional life, even if it means satisfying his desires. It discusses how Archer uses Ellen as a screen on which to project his own desires, which he will never fulfill. Ellen acts as both a symptom of this desire and of the superego nature of his society. Men and women in The Age of Innocence are never able to communicate effectively because of their respective gender norms, but women in this novel are more often willing to break the molds than men.
Now we're moving on to the film Legally Blonde through a feminist lens. So first, the female experience. For the validation of appearance and acceptance of her peers, Elle thinks she must get married to secure her future. The film shows the female experience through the blossoming friendship between Elle and Paulette. The story of Elle elucidates the failings of the narrowly defined feminism of the 21st century from showing how often the women devalue each other, as the women are pitted against each other. Men overlook the most important evidence in the legal case towards the end of the film because they don't assume that any trivial feminine matters, such as perms or designer clothes, could exonerate the client. Women are most worthy when they are decided that they possess the seriousness and the thoughtfulness that the world really needs. When Elle begins working as a lawyer, others view her flirtatious attitude and color-coordinated outfits, and even her scented paper, as feminine, and thus inferior to the men's serious suits. The men are initially portrayed as the real lawyers, while Elle must prove herself before people begin to take her seriously. The film does a good job of showing how unjust this relationship between the sexes is. But before she gains confidence in her intellectual abilities, Elle treats herself as a sexual object and thinks that the only way she could get anyone's approval is to act in the girly manner, because she is so accustomed to the objectification and sexualization from the males in her life. In her admissions video, she submits herself as a sexual object to gain an edge in the application pool. This proves that even women are susceptible to the demeaning and patriarchal attitudes of a male-dominated society. The underlying trenches set before these women constantly create the perils of reliance on male income to create a said happy life. The commentary directly relates to the images of Elle Woods in her innocence to win the heart of a self-centered but well-connected man. But that is before she is enlightened with the understanding of independence.
Now we'll view the same film through a Marxist lens. In Legally Blonde, the people who Elle perceives as the bourgeoisie are the popular and well-connected socialites of her West Coast school. However, when she goes to Harvard for law school, the students do not worry about these types of class structures, so Elle's peers initially ostracize her because they appreciate intellect and despise the social climbing that she had formerly valued. Hegemony in the movie is represented by the smartest people of the class controlling the study group. Elle gets kicked out because others see her as dumb. This rude action makes the status quo seem unchallengeable. Elle feels as though she will not be able to get good grades and move up in the eyes of their peers. Legally Blonde illustrates and critiques the complex relationships between men and women through the story of one young woman trying to make it in a field dominated by men. Elle must overcome significant socioeconomic and class barriers and ingrained social prejudices before others treat her as an equal.
So what's the point of all of this? What is the transformative power of literature? Works such as The Age of Innocence have had a profound impact upon readers from the past 100 years, opening doors for modern women like Elle Woods, who would become an inspiration to young girls everywhere. Novels and film can act as mirrors for society or as images of what could be. Both of these works exposed in a profound way the divisions between men, women, and classes, a subject often found unsavory.
Additionally, no matter how far readers come from the creation or setting of a story, literature has a power to maintain relevance. The fact that we are nearly a century removed from the Age of Innocence and nearly 20 years removed from Legally Blonde proves that a novel's historical dislocation does not make it any less poignant or relatable.
Furthermore, just as society changes, the stories that literature tell have changed to include more stories of empowerment. It is hard to find a girl in America that has not been touched by Elle Woods' story of redemption. Each young woman who views Legally Blonde will consequently carry the lessons forward with her and pass them on to the future generations.
So what can we carry forth from this project? When we started this, we were familiar with the two works we chose, but we wished to achieve a deeper understanding of them and the ways in which literature can deliver a message by allowing us to look at our own lives as narratives. Stories teach us things about ourselves that we may not be able to see in our own lives. Going forward, we believe that we will have the ability to apply these lessons in our relationships, particularly our strong female ones, and our perceptions of the world around us. In this way, we believe our initial goal of delving deeper into familiar works of literature to gain an understanding of a broader picture was achieved.
We will carry forward with us a clearer understanding of the ways in which class struggles play into the female experience. After all, power dynamics between the sexes cannot be fully balanced until men and women have equal opportunity and economic independence.
Although we can and should feel empowered by stories about struggles like the ones we discussed today, we must remember that there is always work to be done in this world. The strength of unity has carried forward various feminist and class equality movements over the past 100 years. Therefore, we as young people have the strength and responsibility to effect change in our lifetimes for the next wave of analytical thinkers.
So how has this project changed us?
From this project, I've learned that femininity does not equate to weakness in a male-dominated world. In my case, I've learned to embrace a future of being the only female engineer in the room, although I hope that many more women will embrace this field. I believe that femininity does not hinder my future success, but rather aids in embracing my potential as a girl in STEM. While I have an analytical mind, I also enjoy shopping for the perfect blazer. This project helped me recognize that I am multifaceted, and my various attributes will help me to succeed in the future.
When I first viewed Legally Blonde as a middle schooler, I remember feeling, above all, inspired. Although I knew of male peers who aspired to be lawyers, I had never really given the career a second thought. After watching Elle Woods climb to the top of her law school class, I realized that I, too, could become a lawyer someday, in spite of the fact that it is a non-traditional field for women. Rewatching the film as a senior in high school has given me a deeper appreciation of the nuances of Legally Blonde. Now that I have a better understanding of the economic and social factors that can hinder a woman's budding career, I am even more inspired by Elle Woods and the lessons of perseverance that she has taught me.
Each of the novels we discussed shows the personal and emotional consequences of unhealthy relationships. When one party controls too much of the relationship, neither is able to truly flourish on their own. These interpersonal relationships form the backbone of much of the struggles of the women until they realize the strength that they have on their own. Relationship advice such as this cannot just be told, but must be experienced, such as it was through the lives of these two women. These stories show me how, even though I am the more outgoing and bold one in my relationship, a truly strong man should never be threatened by this unconventional power dynamic.
Personally, throughout this experience, I've learned that there is no perfect definition for a feminist, much less the perfect woman. Strong, inspirational women can come in any shape or form, whether it be in the unconventional and beautifully tragic Elena Linska or in the determined Elle Woods. I've seen that there is no mold I have to fit in order to make a difference or achieve what I want. Happiness and strength can come from my independence and individuality, and not just the conformity to an accepted idea.